It's been a long time.
When Portal released in 2007, it became a phenomenon. The concept for the game was ingenious, but even more astounding is that Valve successfully executed such a concept to make an incredibly fun and unique game. Then in 2011, Portal 2 released, a sequel that took everything to another level. There were more varied types of puzzles, fully fleshed out levels, new game mechanics, and an amazing story, along with extra co-op content that was tremendously fun. Then, like every other Valve franchise, a third game would never be made. Though it seems a given that many people want a Portal 3, there are those that think the franchise should be left alone because a Portal 3 could potentially be bad or ruin what Portal 2 has accomplished with its story. This is a sentiment I don't agree with. Much like Half-Life 3, Valve needs to go back to the Portal franchise. Portal 3 is a game that deserves to be made and should be made, and I will argue why. My first reason is that Valve can do whatever they want with a third game. Portal's world and lore are ripe for unique stories, characters, and environments. Those that do not want a third game feel they could screw up Portal 2's ending. Though understandable, Valve would not need to continue Chell's story if they do not want to. Instead, they could simply continue some sort of story with GLaDOS if they want. In fact, Portal 2 is a great example of this. The story is great, but one of the most memorable parts was playing co-op after the story. Even then, Valve was not afraid of continuing the story in some way with other characters in GLaDOS, and nothing was ruined. Alternatively, they could make something largely different. If they do this, then there is little risk that the third game could ruin Portal or Portal 2's story. Portal Revolution, though a mod, recently released and takes place between Portal 1 and 2. It is a great example of a different Portal story, yet is still remarkably good. Second, similar to Half-Life 3, the demand for a Portal 3 is incredibly high even after all this time. The speedrunning and modding community makes various older games remain relevant, and with the Portal games it is no different. Additionally, as previously mentioned, Portal Revolution released this year and was popular. The trailer is over 1.5 million views, and the various walkthroughs and videos of the game have gotten millions of views as well. As popular as this is, the great news is that an official Portal 3 release would inevitably be much more popular. Both Portal and Portal 2 sold over 4 million copies each, so a third game would also sell well. Though to be fair, Valve probably doesn't give a crap about sales numbers anymore. Anyway, Portal 3 could include co-op and other multiplayer modes as well, which would make for a great streaming game, helping with its popularity. Lastly, I'll discuss my third and last point, which is also the most important one. Portal 3 is a game Valve does not need to make, which is precisely why they should make it. This is of course a confusing thing to say, so let me explain. Valve has made extremely great games over the past few decades, but some of their best games are ones that never needed to be made. Think about it. Did Left 4 Dead 2 really need to be made? No, they could have kept adding content to the first game, and there were no story reasons to make a second one. More recently, Half-Life Alyx was certainly a game no one knew that they wanted. A prequel VR game in the Half-Life universe? It's definitely a cool concept, but it's certainly not a game anyone was clamoring for, and on the surface level did not seem like a game that needed to be made. I could even argue that Half-Life 2 did not need to be made. They could have kept making smaller installments like Half-Life Opposing Force or Blue Shift. Continuing the story of Gordon Freeman specifically was not always a guarantee, and it was arguably not necessary. Last but especially not least, Portal 2 is the prime example of a game that did not need to be made. The story of Portal was fully finished at the end of the first game. The events were completed. Portal 1 is widely considered to be one of the best PC games ever made. There was no reason for Valve to move forward with the franchise and make a direct sequel in Portal 2, one that could tarnish Portal's reputation. Yet, they did, and it was critically acclaimed and widely loved by everyone. Valve did the impossible, just like how they did it with Half-Life 2, Half-Life Alyx, Left 4 Dead 2, and other sequels. This is my point. Oddly enough, Valve makes some of their best games seemingly when they have no reason to. Portal 3 fits into this unique category. People will say don't touch Portal 2's ending, don't touch the Portal franchise again because another game could ruin it or the story. But that's what Valve has almost always done. They know what to do to make a new, compelling entry in their franchises, and it is something I would fully trust them to do again here. For all these reasons, Portal 3 is simply a game I believe should be made. To be honest, I think there might be at least a small chance of getting some sort of Portal game in the future. The writer of both Portal games, Eric Wolpaw, came out last year and a few years ago publicly stating that he wants Portal 3 to be made, but Valve did not seem interested. Though they were not interested at the time, it's not impossible that Valve could have shifted mindsets after Eric made his statements. Sure, I would not get my hopes too high, but at least it's not a Half-Life 3 scenario. Ultimately, Portal 3 is a game that should be made, and though many original developers have moved on, Half-Life Alyx showed that Valve is still Valve when it comes to making games. Eric Wolpaw was actually one of the writers for Half-Life Alyx as well, so having these talented devs plus Eric would make for a great combination and a great Portal game. But as always, it is up to Valve. Because of this, Portal is currently one of the many legendary Valve franchises not being touched, which is disappointing. Like Half-Life 3, Portal 3 is a game that could put the industry on notice for how good a game can be. Looking at the overall state of gaming, we need games like this now more than ever. But more importantly, Portal 3 would show the world that Valve can count to 3. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.